Hey everybody, it is June 30th, 2010. I am Sonic Sons, and I'm here to talk about sexism, which is a nasty little thing that has messed with society for quite a long time, right? Sexism. We traditionally think of it as men getting preferential treatment over women, and that has certainly happened. You look at a large number of societies over long periods of time, you notice a lot of men in the upper echelons running the show. How many, female emperors of the Roman Empire were there? Yeah. Clearly a bias in the direction of men there, right? And not just the Romans, but so many societies. And that's sad. And even to this day, women suffer the effects of sexism. Women do not receive equal pay for equal work. Even though legally, you can't, slash someone's salary just because of their gender. But statistically, it works out that a man and a woman doing exactly the same job, the man will be making somewhat more money. And what the frick, right? Why do we have that rule? Or, we allow women into the armed forces, finally, but we still haven't allowed them access to the full combat role. This I find bizarre. This is 2010, but there are still restrictions over whether women in the military can be sent into combat. Like, some of them get into combat, naturally, but there are more restrictions on women versus men. And men will be, obviously, you assign whoever's best for the job, and if, for whatever reason, there happens to be more men than women on that, perhaps due to cultural reasons, blah, 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 whatever. But there's actually in the rule books, restrictions. Why do we still have this crap lying around? Don't get me started on don't ask, don't tell. I actually made a video on that already. But I'm not here to talk about the military. We're here to talk about sexism. And women have, and continue to, suffer as a result of sexism. Here's the other side of it, though. Women also benefit from sexism. I'm not saying that equals out, by the way, in the sense look, sexism is just bad for society, okay? By definition, sexism is making unfair judgments based on sex or gender, or giving people unfair treatment, or thinking, inaccurate thoughts based on, preconceived notions of gender or sex. So we ought to get rid of sexism. But it's not entirely men dominating women. It's not like racism. Racism, traditionally, has all the white people sort of above, they have greater prestige and they're thought of to be better people, while all the white people are above all of the black people. So the very worst white person is roughly on par with the very best black person. That's traditional racism, right? But in sexism, it is not the men dominate the women. Men on top, women at the bottom. It is instead the women are in the middle, and the men are on either side. Because if you think President of the United States, you think of a man. But if you think psycho axe murderer, you think of a man, don't you? If you ask someone to list the top 5 heroes and the top 5 villains of history, you won't find men as heroes and women as villains. You'll find men on both lists. Men occupy the extremes in sexism. Women take the middle. So, when you're looking at the upper half of the equation, for instance, wealthy, influential people like CEOs, of the Fortune 500 companies, almost all of them have men, as the CEO. That's an extreme bias towards men. It's ridiculous, right? But take a look at the other half, though. Take a look at the lower echelons of society. You'll find that women are assumed to rank higher than men. You'll find, for instance, for homeless people, for shelters. You ever see a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness? It's about a man and his son, and they become homeless. And the man goes to a shelter in this one scene. and they tell him, you can't get in. This is a women and children's shelter. A women and children's shelter. I ask you, have you ever heard of a men and children's shelter? Have you ever heard of a men's shelter in general? You know, or some new charity, support for battered men? Not really. Like, they exist, I'm sure, but in general, women get more sympathy than men, right? Women who are made homeless are thought more to be sort of down on their luck, or I'm sure some sort of man must have caused the problem, which certainly does happen, that a woman may be abused by a man. Men can be abused by women, though, too. 'Tis possible. And although I can certainly see a preferential treatment for children, who are like quite objectively more vulnerable than adults, why there be any preferential treatment for women just seems sexist to me. And this goes into other areas too. There was someone I knew who decided to give back to his community. And he decided to do Little League coaching. This is not a great thing. Kids playing baseball, you know, you could be the coach, assistant coach, something like that. Be part of these children's childhood memories, you know, be part of that essential experience. Except he wasn't allowed to. He was not allowed. Why, exactly? Well, there was a rule in the books in this town that an unmarried man could not coach Little League. No matter what the circumstances, it was just automatically out. Because the assumption is that a man, in particular an unmarried man, has a significant chance of being some sort of child molester. Right? That was the impetus behind the rule. There was no similar rule for unmarried women are not allowed to coach Little League. No. Women aren't thought of as molesters, but men are. Because on that lower side of society, women get more sympathy. Women and children first, goes the cry if the boat is sinking or whatever. Why do women get to go first when the boat is sinking? That's unfair. It's also unfair that the people who, built the boat in the first place are all men. And then the people, the captain is a man and all these things. Oh, clearly. But that part most people are aware of. I'm just drawing attention to the other side. I saw an article from someone online who was a coach, not for Little League, but for girls' soccer. And sometimes a girl would score a goal, he said, and they'd be very excited about this, and they'd come up and try to hug him. They'd have to hug the coach in celebration they scored a goal. But he couldn't do that. Because it's assumed that if a man, an adult man hugs a girl, these are like, teenage or maybe slightly younger than that girls in this team, that's assumed something is fishy about that, and someone might complain, and someone might have a lawsuit over it, and he'd lose his position as coach, so he could never hug. I ask you, would we harbor the same suspicion towards a female coach hugging children's soccer players? No. Not usually. So there is the other side of sexism for you. Men take the extremes, and you typically hear of men getting all the best things in life. But if you happen to be on the other side of society, they actually get all the worst things in life too. And overall, society suffers. Both male and female. Thanks for watching. See you later.